Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus. I'm your usual host, Michael Moore, and I'm joined by only one, and the one and only, Mike Tagliere. I think the trademark for Mike and Mike is taken, so we probably can't use that for the name of this episode. But for all intents and purposes, it is the Mike and Mike show on the Fantasy Slant today. But there's plenty to talk about. There is some week one notes that we didn't quite get to on the last episode, so we'll be able to fill you all in on that, and then look forward to week two of the preseason with a couple of names that have, quite honestly, a lot to prove and a lot to lose at the same time. So we will go into all of that. But first, as usual, Mike, I like to ask all of our hosts a question to kick things off. So this episode question, it's a two-parter, so listen closely. One trade that you're most proud of, and then one trade that you wish you could take back. It could be any format at any time for anything.
There was a trade I made back. It was, I think, 3 years ago when Larry Fitzgerald started trending downwards. And it was right after like week one where I saw Antonio Brown and I liked him. And I always knew that there would be some touchdown, like a natural progression in his numbers to go forward. So I traded Larry Fitzgerald straight up for Antonio Brown. At the time, people in my league, it was like one of the only trades I've ever made where they were like, Mike, what are you doing? Like, that just seems like it's stupid. Like, are you trying to help this guy win or something? And as it turns out, Antonio Brown was pretty dang good.
It's a good thing they didn't veto that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I'm trying to think of a bad one that I did.
We all have them, Mike. There's no shame in it. So
we did. I think it actually, so here it was. It was a keeper league. I had Le'Veon Bell his rookie year. And I liked him as a volume play. It worked out just fine. And I had, so I was able to keep him for a 6th rounder if I wanted to, which is dirt cheap. But I had so many keepers in this team, I went to trade him away. And I traded him, I think, for a 3rd round pick the next year. And Le'Veon Bell for a 6th round has turned out to be a fantastic keeper because after his 3.5 yards per carry his rookie year, he went on to, set the fantasy world on.
To be awesome.
Yes. Yeah, so that was probably my biggest mistake that I made.
Yeah, and it's those Dynasty League trades that really stick with you the longest. So
yeah,
I know probably my most proud one, and well, I don't know if I'm proud. Like, I definitely took advantage of this person, but oh well. It was I had Ben Tate, and it was a Dynasty League, and you kept like half the roster, and it was IDP, so you're starting like 20 players a game and all that. And I had Ben Tate carried over from the season, and it was in the chip in a chair league. So, and I know guys that I'm in the league with are listening, so there you go. But I had Ben Tate, and it was when he just signed with the Browns, so it looked like Ben Tate was going to be like the starter and a bell cow and all that good stuff. And I don't know if I just wasn't feeling it or what, but I definitely traded him for like a 1st rounder for the next year, and to my surprise, the guy took it, and I was like, okay. And I think I ended up, I don't know if that was the one I took Amari Cooper with or something. I don't know. But anyway, a 1st rounder for Ben Tate at any point in his career is pretty good.
You know what's funny is that there was one trade that I actually I thought about making, but I didn't, and I regretted it up until a couple weeks ago. Christine Michael, remember when Lynch was hurt and Rawls got hurt, Christine Michael was like all of a sudden going to get his chance.
Yeah,
this actually might have been when he was traded to Dallas. It was when he was traded to Dallas, and like the market all of a sudden was like so high for him. I was offered a 1st round pick in 2016 Dynasty in a draft, and I turned it down, thinking, I got Christine Michael with the Cowboys. I'm good. I debated it, and now I still have him on that Dynasty squad. Obviously, I couldn't just drop the guy, but now to hear he's doing well in camp makes me happy.
I was going to say, you're probably going to get some value, maybe not full value for Michael, but you'll get something, which is, believe me, a long way from where we were just a couple months ago on him.
Yeah.
I will say in that same league, and everyone knows this, and this is going to sound horrible, but I had Odell Beckham, right? I had him, past tense. And there's this guy, the guy in every league that everyone loves to trade with?
Mm-hmm.
So that guy came to me and he blew me away with this offer. It was like a 1st and a 2nd and a 1st next year and a second. I don't know what it was, but it was like a whole slew of picks and all this stuff. And it was right before Beckham went off, right? And I had Kelvin Benjamin, so I'm like, I'm good at receiver for a while. And I took it, and that's when he went off. And I've regretted it ever since. So
Jason, I remember that though. I remember that though. More like Odell Beckham fell in rookie drafts that year. I think he went.
I got him in the late second round of this particular
Wow.
rookie draft. And it was at the right time too. And I already took Benjamin, and I was like, well, like that's pretty good value there. So I took him. He was on my bench the first half of the year, and then I've lived to regret it ever since. So,
oh man, that's rough. That's a bad one.
and that's a team with Antonio Brown too. I literally could have had the top two receivers in fantasy football, period. But
That's
okay. I'm not bitter about it, Mike. I'm not bitter.
You don't sound like you are.
No, not at all. No. Not like I will remember it forever. That's fine.
Right.
Anyway, well, let's move on then, Mike, to some other receivers that we're going to get to first. Obviously, the big news of today, or today or yesterday? I think it was
yesterday. Yesterday morning.
Dorial GreenBeckham, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for, backup offensive lineman. Kind of a surprise, but kind of not, because he wasn't really setting Titans camp on fire, Mike. But at the same time, they invested a second-round pick last year. So it's kind of surprising to see them, wave the white flag, so to speak, so early. But I guess, first question is, what does this do to the Eagles' wide receiver depth? Is it fair to assume Ruben Randle has not exactly been impressing people?
I don't think Ruben Randle's impressed me at all over the past couple of years. I even watched him with the Giants last year, and being in Chicago, I was in the Chicago market, and so I didn't see all the Giants games. But whenever I'd watch the Giants, I'd watch Ruben Randle, and he just looked lazy running routes. Even after catching the ball, he looked like he was just seriously like half-assing it. That's just the best way I could describe what Ruben Randle did last year. And to see him get the contract he did with the Eagles, it wasn't a huge contract and one that they can get out of. And there's rumors that he's actually on the cut list. So Ruben Randle, he doesn't. Oh man, he definitely takes a back seat. But here's the thing. Getting traded this close to the season it's a tough thing. First off, this entire team is learning the Doug Peterson offense. Second, Dorial GreenBeckham obviously doesn't catch on very quick in NFL systems. But if you think that he doesn't have any impact on any wide receivers, you're wrong. He's going to walk in, even in week one, he will have a goal line package. The guy is, I think it was a good trade on the Eagles' part. They didn't give up much. I know that they don't have very much offensive line depth to deal, but at the same time, to get a second-round wide receiver that has talent, we can't say that he's not talented. I just think he's lacking a little bit upstairs, and it may take some time. He's an extremely, extremely young guy, but we know what he can do towards the goal line. So I like the move for the Eagles. I think this has more implications on the Titans than it does the Eagles, though.
Well, and just real quick on the Eagles then. So you've got obviously Nelson Aguilar, who, horrible rookie year. He's hoping to rebound this year. Jordan Matthews, actually recovering from an injury at the moment, so he's not going to be playing a whole lot of preseason. Is Matthews still the receiver to own there in Philadelphia? I mean, we all concede that there's not really going to be any receiver that's going to light the world on fire there. But if we had to pick one, who's the best value on that team?
Jordan Matthews is still the guy. He's the only guy there that I would own. He's, I know there's been a lot of chatter this offseason that, they're worried about him, that he can only play the slot. They're going to find ways to keep that guy in the field no matter where he plays. So I'm not really concerned about that. It does cap his touchdown potential with Dorial GreenBeckham there because, as I said, Dorial GreenBeckham is going to be a presence in the goal line. Nelson Aguilar, by many beat writers, have talked about that he's a bust, that the Eagles are seriously concerned that he's a bust. And so trading for Dorial GreenBeckham when they don't have the offensive line depth, it just shows that they were out there looking. Josh Huff looks like he's going to make the team, but Jordan Matthews is the only one that I would trust there. But there's only so much that you can actually trust Jordan Matthews just because it's going to be a low-volume offense, a lot lower than it's been the last few years with Chip Kelly. And then you have Sam Bradford at the helm, who has never really created a top 15 wide receiver. So Jordan Matthews, he's the only one I would own, but I'm not going crazy to own him. I'd be okay with having him as my number 3 receiver on a team.
And now over to the Titans, Mike. I mean, this probably speaks a lot to their receiving core there, and they obviously felt comfortable enough to trade him away. And again, probably not an offense that the receivers are going to do a ton of production fantasy-wise, but, who's the receiver to own there? Would it be Rishard Matthews, who, hasn't been heard from a whole lot, but that's not necessarily a bad thing?
Yes, it is Rishard Matthews, I would think, because he's the one that they went out and they spent money on. Kendall Wright's in a contract year, so I actually think some people are underestimating Kendall Wright just a tad, especially in PPR leagues. But what this does all this does for these Titans receivers is gives you more confidence when drafting them. Before, it was like, I like Rishard Matthews because they're saying nothing good about Dorial GreenBeckham, but you knew that Beckham would have some sort of role. I mean, look at last year. He played just over half the snaps. GreenBeckham, that is. He scored 4 touchdowns. With Mariota out most of the season, having Mettenberger throw to him. So it was not the best combination of quarterbacks throwing him the ball, and he still scored 4 touchdowns. So to say that the loss of GreenBeckham does nothing to people's projections is wrong. I'll shout that from a mountain that Dorial GreenBeckham was going to have an impact on these guys' totals, whether it be their upside, their weekly consistency, their touchdown ability, all that stuff. But what it does is it frees up, even if you projected Beckham for, 40, 50 targets, it frees that up. Rishard Matthews is going right now late. I want to say he's in the 50s or 60s being drafted as a wide receiver. And this is a guy who's going to see over 100 targets. So when you talk about that, Marcus Mariota taking a step forward, he's fully healthy, them having an actual run game this year. I like actually both Rishard Matthews and Kendall Wright. Tajayi Sharp, he's going to be one of those deeper sleepers. He's not someone on the redraft radar right now for me, but I definitely would take a chance in rostering Kendall Wright in PPR leagues, a 12-teamer. Even if you take him one of your last picks, he's a fine stash. Him and Mariota looked very good last year together, and Rishard Matthews is an efficient wide receiver, which makes me believe he's going to see the majority of targets.
Well, and Sharp, and I agree with you on Sharp, probably not, anything of value for redraft or daily stuff this year, but definitely in rookie drafts.
Yeah.
I think you're safe to take him a lot higher than you would have even a month ago now. So
yeah, with Dorial GreenBeckham gone, it actually clears up a spot for him to walk into the starting lineup. If they do, and we're talking about 2 wide receiver sets, if they do let Kendall Wright walk, which is a very good possibility.
Sure. All right, let's go to another wide receiver situation that is fun. The Carolina question, which essentially comes down to Kelvin Benjamin versus Devin Funchess. You've got Kelvin Benjamin, Mike, who coming off a torn ACL, had a very good rookie season, at least statistically. 70 catches, 1,000 yards, I believe 9 touchdowns, but again, sat out all last year with a torn ACL. I think people were struggling with his value heading into this season just because they weren't sure if, he was even going to be the guy in Carolina there. But then you have Devin Funchess, who by, some accounts was the MVP of Panthers training camp. You've also got stories of Kelvin Benjamin's conditioning not being the best it could be. So I guess the question is, Mike, is there a sea change there as far as receivers go in Carolina?
I'm not going to say that there's a change of guard just yet. But what I will say is that I'm actually working on a piece right now for PFF. It's called Buyer Beware, and it's going through some people, because right now we pretty much know where ADP is. It's not moving unless there's an injury. Nothing's changing right now. So I saw Kelvin Benjamin being taken 3-8. He's taken in the 3rd round as the 8th pick.
No.
And before I put the kibosh on that, I'll say I understand why people want to believe in Kelvin Benjamin. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. He's a massive end zone target. Cam Newton loved him in 2014, peppered him with tons of targets. Cam Newton took a step forward last year as a passer. There's so many reasons why I understand people want to love Kelvin Benjamin, but it's 2016 now. We're talking about a team that took a step forward without him in the passing game last year. Ted Ginn stretches the field, which is fine. That's fine. That doesn't really affect Kelvin Benjamin too much, but Devin Funchess has taken real strides. And if you watch the preseason week 1, one of the things I look for is not just necessarily a touchdown catch from a receiver, because that can go in so many different ways. Like Darius Hayward-Bay caught a touchdown. It was a body catch. What I look for in a wide receiver, I want to see him catch the ball with his hands. And if you watch the Panthers game, you got to see Devin Funchess. He caught the ball with his hands. Not just that, but he kept his 2 feet in bounds. It was a number 1 wide receiver type play. And you've seen him doing that over the second half of last year. Kelvin Benjamin does have conditioning issues. He is coming off an ACL, and no matter which way you slice it, the guy being 6'5" and 240 with an ACL injury is worse than a guy who's 5'10", 180 pounds coming off an ACL injury. He puts a lot of torque on those knees as a wide receiver. So Kelvin Benjamin at 3'8", you are drafting him at his absolute ceiling. Like you're expecting him to do what he did in 2014, and that was see 143 targets and score so many touchdowns. It accounted for 35% of his fantasy points. The league average is 27%, so he was way over that. Cam Newton's going to regress in touchdowns. There's so many reasons why Kelvin Benjamin does not belong in the 3rd round. To me, he's more of a 5th round wide receiver, but me personally, Devin Funchess in the 12th round screams value all day long. Love Devin Funchess in the 12th round.
Well, and not to pile on Kelvin Benjamin, but I'm going to, because I also have a piece coming out, but it's the Dynasty stock watch, so it's geared more towards guys to buy or sell on the Dynasty side. And yeah, I agree with everything you said with Benjamin. A couple stats that stood out to me on him. Fun fact, he had the 2nd lowest catch rate of any 1,000-yard receiver in 2014 when he did it. Only Vincent Jackson caught a lower percentage of balls than Kelvin Benjamin did. He had 140-something targets, but only caught 70 of those. And then last year with the Panthers, as an offense, they actually ran 3 more run plays a game and passed it exactly 3 less plays a game last season. So not only do you have a receiver that, like you said, isn't very good at catching the ball to begin with, but, they're not even throwing it nearly as much as they were. And I seem to recall you made a very good note about Benjamin and Funchess and catching with their hands and catching with their body. That was the knock on Benjamin, or at least one of them, when he came out of Florida State, was he uses his body too much and doesn't use his hands enough. So, yeah, I think I'm with you, Mike. Whether it's redraft or Dynasty, I think we're definitely selling on Benjamin at this point. And look, if you have people in your league that are going to take Benjamin in that 3rd round of a redraft, or, I think I've seen him in Dynasty ADP as like the 18th or 19th receiver. Like, go ahead, let them do that all day, and you will not be sorry you did that. So, all right, enough wide receiver talk, Mike. Let's get into a few of the running back battles that we did not get to last edition of the Fantasy Slant, and some situations that, either got some clarity after week 1 of the preseason or just made things a tad murkier. Let's start with Miami. Arian Foster did not play, but Ajayi did, and unfortunately did nothing to separate himself from Arian Foster. So, Mike, sort of a preview of the second half of the Fantasy Slant. What are you looking for in week 2? Because, I think Ajayi probably has a lot more to prove at this point than Arian Foster, right?
He absolutely does. And that's the thing, is I'm not looking for too much out of Arian Foster. I cannot see Adam Gase putting him out there for more than a couple series just to kind of get his feet wet. He hasn't played the game in a little while, but Adam Gase has come out and talked about Arian Foster as a wide receiver, I say, out of the backfield, what he can do as a receiver. So the way I look at Foster is he's going to be eased in. There's no reason to hurry him up. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. Adam Gase knows what he can do. I'm not looking for too much out of that, but Ajayi, I can't see any way that I would own him on a fantasy team being drafted where he is right now. If you look at the schedule for the Dolphins over the first 4 weeks, it's a brutal schedule, and one where they're going to be down in a lot of these games. So therefore, Arian Foster is going to be on the field a lot. Ajayi doesn't offer anything that Arian Foster can't offer in the passing game, pass blocking, any of that stuff. So Arian Foster is going to see a lot of work in the first 4 weeks. So if you're looking to draft Ajayi, my advice to you is to wait after the first 4 weeks and then trade for him. You could probably get him cheaper then, and then basically you're banking on an Arian Foster injury.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So far, it's a situation probably to avoid. There's not a whole lot of clarity with that. So if you can help yourself, don't draft a Miami running back, at least like Mike said, until after a month or so. All right, let's go to Washington, Mike, where the running back depth chart, honestly, is very clear. It's just a matter of how good that will be. Matt Jones, again, not great in week 1, but again, not entirely his fault. The offensive line didn't really help him. I think for me, another story that was interesting was the fact that Keith Marshall was abysmal and actually got dropped down to 4th string on the depth chart recently. So, I think this just proves that Matt Jones isn't going anywhere. He's going to get a chance to be a we still thinking Matt Jones is low back better than that.
Hey, sorry, Mike, you were breaking up in there, but I think that you were saying, Matt, I know you were talking about Matt Jones and whether or not I think he has value where he is. The Redskins running back situation as a whole is a mess. Matt Jones is one of those guys where you almost want to take him just because there's nobody else there. Chris Thompson offers you little to no upside in the running game. He can obviously catch the ball out of the backfield. He's one of those Theo Riddick types where you know he's going to catch the ball. Matt Jones can offer a little bit in the receiving game, but the biggest story here is Keith Marshall. There's a lot of people who are expecting big things out of Marshall, and he honestly came out and he didn't look very good, but neither did any of the other running backs. So it was more of an offensive line issue, and that's really not changing. I know they drafted a lot to try and help the situation, but it's still a very young offensive line, and they have no continuity right now. There was a beat writer that came out, I think it was today, and said that Keith Marshall, again, and I heard this early in the preseason, it might have been even after OTAs, where Keith Marshall was, and he has a chance of being cut, which is just crazy because this kid, you know, he was highly touted and you thought he might have a future in the NFL, but now he's on the bubble again. They're saying that he's not guaranteed to make the 53-man roster. I think that's a mistake. I don't think that he gets cut, but it's just, it reassures that Matt Jones is going to get carries, whether you like it or not. I'm not a huge Matt Jones fan. There were actually two running backs. Spencer Ware was one, and Thomas Rawls, I want to believe, or it might have been Le'Veon Bell was the other. They averaged more yards after contact than Matt Jones actually averaged, period. So it's never a good thing. It's never a good thing when you see that stat. So Matt Jones, he's a very, very boring guy. He's one of those guys, like if you're 0 RB, I guess. But I'm grabbing a couple workhorses that actually have talent over Matt Jones.
Yeah. No, I think we're in agreement there. I mean, look, Matt Jones is going to get a chance, but I don't know how long that chance will be. And look, let's face it. I mean, Washington's going to be chucking it anyway. So, yeah, don't expect a lot, I think, from Matt Jones is the lesson here. But when we come back, Mike, we will get to what we're looking forward to in week 2 of the preseason. But before that, this message. All right, and now we are back, and we are looking, Mike, at week 2 of the preseason. Some would say week 2's, maybe the most important game, or at least, more important than week 1 and week 4, definitely. So there's going to be a lot of guys that are, on the bubble, or maybe, they're looking to see if they can be starters or not. So let's just jump right into some players that you think have the most to prove and or lose. Let's start with Davante Adams. We haven't heard from Davante Adams in a while, Mike, but I think just by default, he's probably got the third wide receiver position in Green Bay locked up. What are you looking for in week 2 out of Davante Adams?
He has to have that spot locked up. And honestly, I just don't want him to drop the ball. That's it. I don't care. I don't care what else.
Literally and figuratively, don't drop the ball.
No, seriously. Like, I mean, the guy's got all the opportunity in the world, and the Packers, lucky for him, the Packers haven't given up on him because he has had 2 abysmal seasons. Like, he's been really, really bad. And when you're getting thrown the ball from Aaron Rodgers, the reason I think he gets a little bit of a pass from me in year 2, everybody on the Packers roster was awful. Nobody played well last year. So, year 1, he's a rookie. Year 2, okay, it wasn't good. There's no way to slice it. But Jeff Janis breaking his hand, I never thought that Jeff Janis was anything to really, really worry about anyways. Ty Montgomery still isn't healthy. I believe that's the case. Jared Abbrederis, there's a bunch of guys in this roster they're just guys. Davante Adams was, he had a high pedigree. So, that's what you kind of hang your hat on and say, well, I'm not giving up on him yet. And the Packers apparently aren't either. But I just don't want him to drop the ball. If he catches every pass that comes his way, that's all you can really ask. Just no drops. It's so frustrating because he was somebody that I really thought would turn out to be a top 20 dynasty receiver for a long time.
Well, look, Mike, don't be so hard on yourself. We all did. Okay. You weren't alone in that assessment, but, and I agree with you. I mean, he landed in like the most ideal situation to take his sweet time to develop because most other teams either would have drafted someone by now to come in, or, look, he got very lucky that he didn't have to be the man right away. He's still the third option there. And he probably will be for, the rest of his career, at least in Green Bay. I can't imagine him ever stepping up and being the first or second option, at least at this stage. So, he's just got – you were going to say.
I think he actually was grooming to be like the Jordy Nelson replacement. I think that's what they
Oh yeah.
wanted him to be. And honestly, I mean, if he steps up this year, I still think it's possible. But I'm sticking with my guns here. I'm still saying that Michael Floyd comes to Green Bay via free agency, because I don't know. I just love to see that. And I'm a Bears fan, but I fantasy football is my thing, and I just Michael Floyd with Aaron Rodgers would be something special. Yeah, so I'm sticking with that. But Davante Adams does have an opportunity, and if he could turn it around, he's going to make a lot of people a lot of money, because you're getting him for dirt cheap right now. He's free.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably the trade-off to him not having a great 2 seasons was, his value is pretty low. So, and honestly, let's face it, this is not just this week being make or break. This is a make or break year for him. If he can't progress from the previous 2 seasons, I can't imagine them, being idle for that 3rd spot again, either through the draft or free agency, like you said. So,
right.
No, the clock is definitely ticking. So. All right, another player, Jeremy Langford, everyone's favorite running back to hate in the fantasy circle. There was some talk that there was going to be this committee with John Fox, and I know there's a very interesting stat that says he's only given a running back more than 60% of the carries one time in his career, but I don't think Kadeem Carey has really done anything, and I know that Jordan Howard, the rookie from Indiana, has not done anything to push himself into the conversation. So it looks like this is Jeremy Langford's job to lose, Mike.
It really is, and that's the thing that people aren't realizing. I know earlier in the offseason, I was so shocked. It was like right after the season, everybody wants to talk about their rankings and what they would be. And, I took a look at the fantasy draft ADP calculator, and Jeremy Langford was being taken as like the number 13 running back, which was absurdly high. There was no way that I thought Jeremy Langford would ever fit there. I saw him as like a low-end RB2. And now the hate's gone way too far. I've seen him drop outside of the top 30 running backs often in like NFL 10s and things like that. I don't know where his ADP sits among casual leagues right now, but it can't be really high. But here's the thing. I talked about this with Carlos Hyde the other day, and the reason I like him so much, there's a few things I look at when I look at a running back. One, I look at talent. Obviously, Carlos Hyde's a lot more talented than Jeremy Langford, but Langford, he made some nice plays last year. I'm not saying he was great, but a running back is a running back in the NFL. We want volume, okay? So number 2, after talent, which is, okay, you look at the depth chart. You want to know what's behind him and the chance that he loses that job. So when you look at Kadeem Carey, I'm not worried about him. You look at Jaquiz Rodgers, who's actually 3rd on the depth chart. We're obviously not worried about him. And then they drafted Jordan Howard, who is a natural runner. He's a little up and down for my taste. He doesn't put the head down. He's more of an up and down runner. He doesn't catch the ball well out of the backfield. And I think that's why he started out number 4 on the depth chart. I think that's the big story here, is that he's nowhere near Langford right now. Right. So by drafting Jeremy Langford, I'm comfortable drafting him right around that RB25 range, because he's one of the guys that's in the league that's actually guaranteed volume. The Bears running backs carried the ball more than any other team in the NFL last year. So there's plenty of carries to go around. So when you talk about the John Fox stat of 60%, I'm not even too worried about that, because there's plenty of volume. The Bears defense did get better. They're not going to lean on Jay Cutler. They're just not going to do that. That's not how John Fox operates. He doesn't trust rookies historically. So I'm not really too worried about the talent behind Jeremy Langford. So it's gone to the point where he's actually undervalued, in my opinion.
And it's kind of interesting. We just talked about Matt Jones. You've got Jeremy Langford, 2, I think we could agree, mediocre backs as far as talent goes, yet they have like 2 of the best situations for running backs in the league. So, all right, real quick though, Mike, if you had to choose one, because I think they're probably about the same as far as ADP goes, Matt Jones or Jeremy Langford for the season, who are you taking?
Man,
and I realize it's not exactly a sexy choice.
It's not. But honestly, I'd probably go at Langford. He's actually shown on the NFL level that he can score fantasy points. Matt Jones never really did that last year. He broke I think 2 long runs. Outside of that, he was abysmal. Like 3.4 yards per carry, I think is what it was. He was really, really bad. And that's not to say that he can't turn it around. It's the same with Langford. He averaged, I think, 3.6, 3.7 yards per carry.
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell, he averaged 3.5 yards per carry his rookie year. So it's not to say that, these guys can't turn it around. But I'll take John Fox and how much he runs the ball. I'll take that over Matt Jones and, that offense, because they're going to throw the ball a lot.
No, I agree. And I think, and I know you mentioned this with Matt Jones, the offensive line too, I think in Washington would concern me a tad. So,
the Bears' offensive line isn't the greatest either, but it's, yeah.
Jeremy Langford, it's not a fun choice to make, but I guarantee you some listeners out there are going to have to make it at some point. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get to some other players real quick, Mike. One player I did want to talk about who's very interesting to me, Tyler Boyd. Rookie receiver out of Cincinnati. There wasn't really talk of him starting necessarily to start the offseason, but now you've got Brandon LaFell with yet another injury. Tyler Boyd looked pretty good in preseason. So what does this do for Tyler Boyd for you, Mike? Is he pushing his way into the starting lineup there in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think he is by default. The Bengals have dealt with so much this offseason to their passing corps. You look at it, Marvin Jones is gone. Mohamed Sanu is gone. Tyler Eifert got injured, and he's probably going to miss the first 1 to 3 games they're talking about. And now Brandon LaFell, who wasn't a great option to begin with, now he's down. Man, what are you looking at? Brandon Tate, Mario Alford, James Wright. Like this is not a great depth chart. And the thing is, the sad part is, the crazy thing is, there's really nobody out there as a free agent. What are you going to do? Go out and get Roddy White? I don't really know what you do. I think that's the reason the Titans signed Andre Johnson. There wasn't much out there. So if there's one thing that's clear from all of this, is that AJ Green is going to be peppered with targets. And as much as, here's the thing. So I want to address this because it's a question I receive on Twitter a lot. It comes to when those wide receivers that are like AJ Green are going to see a lot of attention, and that there's nobody that can pull that attention away and this and that. I understand it. But when you actually start to watch film and you start to realize how much they're going to move AJ Green around the formation, you cannot just all of a sudden assign a couple players on your football team and say, hey, both of you guys are going to follow around AJ Green. No, sometimes you'll have a shadow corner who's going to do that, but it's a lot harder than you think to narrow down one wide receiver. Why do you think Kelvin Johnson was so successful for so long with no other semblance of a wide receiver in Detroit? It's because it's harder than you think to do. AJ Green's a fantastic wide receiver. That's why he's my number 4 wide receiver this year behind the big 3. But Tyler Boyd, I think he actually fits the role they're going to need him to play very well. He's a possession style receiver. I don't think he has a very high ceiling. He kind of looks like Arian Foster out there as a wide receiver, which is kind of odd. But I think he's a fine option. I don't think he's going to be, a top 36 wide receiver or anything like that. But if you're looking for like a bye week fill-in or something like that, Tyler Boyd could fill that role.
Yeah, and I may be a little more bullish on him than other people, but I really liked his, what he did in preseason. And again, it was only one game, so I realized you got to tap the brake. But yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity there. I mean, you've got Marvin Jones gone. He had 103 targets last year. Mohamed Sanu gone, 49 targets last year. Even Tyler Eifert, who, it's highly questionable that he's going to start the season, had 74 last year. And I agree with you. I think AJ Green is probably going to build on the 132 targets he had, but I think that leaves a lot to have as far as Tyler Boyd goes. And I tend to like him more than Marvin Jones or Mohamed Sanu in that role. And look, I'm with you. I don't think he's going to be a top 30 receiver, and I don't think Andy Dalton all of a sudden becomes a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But Marvin Jones's line last year, 65 catches, 800 yards. I think that's probably within striking distance. Is that crazy?
I don't think it's crazy to do that. I think right now, without knowing too much on LaFell, I only have Boyd projected for around 550 and 4. But if something were to happen to LaFell, I could definitely see that number going up to around the 700 range and 5 touchdowns. I could see that just because of the lack of options. And man, it's brutal. But if you compare AJ Green to anything, you can compare him to Julio Jones last year. I mean, Roddy White was a ghost out there. Yep. He was a possession receiver at best. They didn't have a tight end. They started with Levine Toilolo, and then they moved to Jacob Tamme as the season went on. So you saw how much Julio Jones was peppered with targets, and obviously AJ Green's a similar talent. Like I'm the biggest Julio Jones fan you'll find, but AJ Green is right there with him. AJ Green is fantastic. So if you take anything from this conversation, it's that AJ Green is a monster, and I would take him over DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, and you said Hopkins, and look, Hopkins is a good example of that too. He saw nearly 200 targets last year and had nobody behind him on the depth chart. So, I think I'm with you there. Probably one or two more, Mike, before we go. Oh, another rookie who is very intriguing at the tight end position, Tyler Higbee of your Los Angeles Rams. 5 of 6, 5 balls from 6 targets, for 49 yards in week 1. If he can keep this up in week 2, Mike, I think he's probably the starter, and I think he's probably not a bad streamer option or even tight end 2 option, right?
Poor Lance Kendricks. This guy could never, ever.
He's got the worst luck, that Lance Kendricks.
He really does. And it's funny because Brandon and I were talking about him, I think it was a couple weeks ago on the show, about Lance Kendricks and how he could actually be a sneaky top 15 tight end because there are targets to go around in that offense. Yep. I mean, the wide receiver position, there's really no AJ Green or something like that who's going to take a lot of the targets. I mean, to Tavon Austin, I know Jeff Fisher, he said he's going to catch 100 balls, but that's never going to happen.
Do we really believe anything Jeff Fisher says anymore, Mike?
I don't know if we can believe anything that he says anymore. But Tyler Higbee, I like him, but the thing is, he's a rookie tight end. When you talk about rookie tight ends, it's hard for me to believe in those guys, especially when there's a veteran on the roster like Kendricks. I know that Fisher's talking him up, saying he's got the characteristics of Gronk, which is just don't ever compare somebody to Gronk because that's
definitely don't believe anything Jeff Fisher says then.
No, but that's what I'm saying. And so rookie tight ends, if you go through and look at them historically, they don't perform. So Lance Kendricks is still the one that I would like to own if I had to own any of them, but they're streaming options. Just pay attention to how they're used, the snap counts, and that's all going to be in the PFF articles that we write.
All right, Mike, let's stick with tight ends, and this is probably even less optimistic viewpoint. Jordan Cameron, the country known as Jordan Cameron from the Miami Dolphins, has not been heard from in quite a while. And I think there was some hope when Adam Gase got hired that they would utilize him and maybe there'd be a resurgence. But what do we think about that, especially heading into week 2 of the preseason?
Well, there's one thing I've learned after going through so many different preseasons in the NFL. You kind of try to ignore the building up of players because, I mean, there's usually not many reports out there that aren't good about a player. You know, every blurb you see and everybody's talking great about everybody. Yeah, everybody's great. Everybody's going to break out. But what sets off alarms and what should set off alarms is when you hear something, just you keep hearing bad things about a player.
Right.
And Jordan Cameron is actually someone that I've heard nothing but bad things about. And it's really, it really stings because Adam Gase coming there, I kind of felt like he could have a resurgence to his career. But man, I think that they're going to actually, I think Adam Gase is trying to game plan to work around Jordan Cameron now, where he's not really going to target the tight end very often like he did in Denver, like he did in Chicago. I think they're going to move Leonte Carew into a role where he's more that possession guy over the middle of the field, along with Jarvis Landry. So Jordan Cameron, he's somebody that has moved down my rankings. When Gase went there, I was excited. I was like, this could be a resurgence. But the more time goes on, the more I'm moving him down. He's outside of my top 20. He might even be outside my top 25 right now. So he's far off the radar. Until I see or hear Adam Gase say something positive about Jordan Cameron, think far away.
Yeah, and it's really too bad because, and it's not to say that we couldn't see this coming. I mean, Jordan Cameron had, I think, one breakout season in Cleveland, signed that pretty decent-sized deal with Miami, and we thought, oh, they're signing him for a reason. They're going to make him a priority. But, even that was the last regime, and you've got the new regime in here who, look, if he doesn't produce pretty quickly, he's probably on his way out, and they'll probably end up, who knows? Thomas Duarte could be the starting tight end next year in your deeper rookie dynasty leagues for those of you in those. So, well, Mike, that will do it for this edition of the Fantasy Slants. He's Mike Tagliere. I'm Michael Moore, and we will see you next time.